Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons & Dragons 5th Edition and the Dr. Sleep problem. Okay, so let's talk about this. So what is Dr. Sleep? Dr. Sleep is a really fascinating movie, and I think it may have a deep, deep lesson for the Wizards of the Coast for Hasbro Gaming, who owns Dungeons & Dragons, and what should be done and what should not be done for Dungeons & Dragons' future to be strong. All right, so let's talk about this. It's really, really interesting. So let's get into this. So what is Dr. Sleep exactly? So Dr. Sleep is a really fascinating movie. Dr. Sleep is a 2020 sequel to the 1980s movie The Shining. Yeah, you heard that right. It is a sequel to a movie that is 40 years old. Now that's weird, right? Now The Shining and Dr. Sleep were both written by Stephen King. And Stephen King is the reason this can happen, okay? Right now, I think virtually everything Stephen King's ever written is being remade by one streaming service or another, right? And the reason why is you attach the Stephen King name to it, you're already going to have a built-in audience, right? Millions of people have read his books. Millions of people continue to read his books. I'm a huge fan of him. My son is an even bigger fan, which is incredible, right? Like, he's from my generation, but he's got a bigger, and I'm Gen X, and my son is a millennial, and he's a bigger fan than I am. That says a lot. Stephen King is no joke. That dude does not play. He gets it done, right? And it's really interesting just, what's happening with all of this, this content, right? So basically, The Shining is a movie that happened in 1980 with Jack Nicholson and Shelley Duvall and a little kid. I don't know the little kid's name, but he played the character Danny, okay, which is relevant. Now, the movie The Shining, right, what's going on there? Right? The movie Dr. Sleep. Well, the story of The Shining is basically a family agrees to watch a haunted ski resort. Right? It's a ski resort. It might be a little different than that, but it's essentially a ski resort. So, I'm sorry. That's not quite true. It's a resort, not a ski resort. It's actually closed during the winter, and it has this big winding pass that runs to it, and it's really inaccessible during the winter. So every year, the resort has to hire a person. And Jack Nicholson, I think his name is Mr. Thorson. Thorson, I think is his name. So Mr. and Mrs. Thorson and their child Danny, they take this job to watch over the resort. Well, the husband goes crazy, and there's ghosts in this place because 30 years before the Thorsons arrived, some dude took the same job with his two daughters and wife, hacked them to death with an axe, his wife and his kids, and then put a shotgun in his mouth and ended it, right? So those ghosts are right up there in the hotel, right? Really, really bad, like super scary, not a good situation, right? And so all that's going on, right? This place is super, super haunted, and it's just scary as all get out, right? To everybody who's there. So this little boy, Danny, is brought with his mom and dad to this place. The mother realizes that the father is going absolutely bonkers crazy. She starts getting more and more scared. She genuinely loves her husband. She loves her child. She needs to protect herself, and she needs to protect her child. The same thing that happened to the dude 30 years ago. The father goes crazy and gets to the point where he's going to kill his wife and his son with an axe, right? And he goes after them, right? Well, this kid, Danny, essentially goes into battle with his father in a topiary maze, right? And loses his father and escapes his father. But the way he does this is the little boy Danny has the Shining. And the Shining is this superpower, right? It's like psychic power, okay? Now, that's the Shining. Then you have Dr. Sleep. Now, here, Ewan McGregor, the actor for Obi-Wan Kenobi, comes in and plays the boy from The Shining in the movie. And it does it like decades later. He's fully grown up, right? The mother, Shelley Duvall, is not in the movie. which makes sense. Well, I guess I don't know if that makes sense or not. Oh yeah, they have to show like new scenes with Danny when he's young, and so the child and the mother are recast for the flashbacks in Doctor Sleep. But Doctor Sleep is the story of the grown-up Danny, this super powerful psychic, right? And he's reached out by a new shining kid who has even more power than he did when he was young, right? And so I watched this. Now, I watched Doctor Sleep recently. I wanted to see Doctor Sleep immediately when it came out. But I'm like, I know I can't see that movie, right? Now, why could I not see Doctor Sleep? Well, I had never seen The Shining ever in my life. Like, I was 10 years old when The Shining was made. It's a rated R movie. There's no way my mom and dad are going to take me to a movie where a family's hacked to death with an axe, right? Like, no, it's not going to happen, right? So I had never seen The Shining. We were too poor to have HBO when I was young, which is fine. We, hey, you can get some grit, right? So I had never seen The Shining, and The Shining never streamed anywhere, right? Until recently. Recently, they put Doctor Sleep on HBO Max, which is a service that I have, right? And again, I was like, oh, I'd like to watch that movie, but I can't watch that movie. I know that's a sequel to The Shining. I'm not going to understand that movie if I don't watch The Shining, right? So then I had to wait another 3 months until The Shining finally came on HBO Max, right? So now The Shining is there on HBO Max. I can watch it. Doctor Sleep is on HBO Max. I can watch it. And I did. I watched it, okay? I watched them back to back. I fully understood The Shining. Fantastic movie. Unbelievable horror film. Really, really good. As good as it's been talked up to be, and it's a quite famous horror movie. And then Doctor Sleep was fantastic. I absolutely loved it, right? Now, here's the problem. What's that got to do with D&D? Well, I think we might have a Doctor Sleep problem, okay? Dungeons & Dragons has new fans and old fans, right? But who gets served in each new book? Are these new books being written for the old fans or the new fans? And the answer is it's being written for the old fans, okay? Dungeons & Dragons needs a massive change, right? It needs to be far less complicated, and it needs to be far less abstract. That needs to happen for younger people, right? It's not because they can't read or they're not as intelligent as older people. Their attention spans are far, far shorter, right? They've grown up in a kind of a video game culture, texts, a million different screens, a million different experiences. Like, they don't play 8-hour games of Dungeons & Dragons the way we used to. And the reason why is they got a million things to do, right? They don't need to. It just doesn't work like that anymore, right? There's no need for these super long games, right? And so basically you have this situation where they are playing more tighter games, right? And so basically that's my issue. Is I think Dungeons and Dragons is being made with there's a lot of woke content being put in for the young people, right? But the rules and the structure is still 1988. It really is, right? And so I worry that just like Doctor Sleep, an amazing film that should have had success that did not have critical or commercial success because the sequel had been 40 years earlier, right? So my point is, I think right now with Dungeons & Dragons, we are really building sequels for people who played the game in the 80s. And that is a major, major problem. I think the future of Dungeons & Dragons is go over to Index Card RPG, take that entire rule set, bring it into Dungeons & Dragons, make it truly as accessible and fun and simple and elegant as people who think it is before they play, right? And really just gut it of its complexity and its abstraction. I really think that's the future of the game. And we need to do it because we don't want to have a Dr. Sleep now, right? Dr. Sleep was an amazing film. Nobody watched it. Nobody cared. And the reason why is nobody had seen this highly inaccessible movie that it was a sequel to that came 40 years earlier, right? So we cannot be writing sequels to 1974 content for Dungeons & Dragons in 2021. And we need to stop it. And guess what? A lot of the OSR is doing this, right? They're like, ooh, I can't get enough of my 70s or 80s, old school essentials. Useless, right? Like, What's the point of that, right? Why revisit all that old nonsense, right? Let's start building for the future. Let's not give ourselves a Dr. Sleep fail on Dungeons & Dragons. That's my opinion. What do you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Let me know in the comments below. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.